Jon Browning has been involved in financial markets for the past 3 decades. At one point in time, managing over $157 billion for one of the largest firms on Wall Street. At one point, about a year after September 11th, as he stood alone in his hotel room, looking down on the remains of the Twin Towers, he made the decision to concentrate more on building his life and not just his career and personal portfolio. Since then, he has started his own firm, Guardian Rock Wealth, published an Amazon bestseller, Build a Life, Not a Portfolio, and he has decided to dedicate his career to helping people from all walks of life build their best lives as they define it. Please welcome Jon Browning. Woo!
Hello, everybody. I just want to warn you that we're going to do a lot of hard work for the next 15 minutes, okay? But we're going to celebrate with stale bread and water. Who's with me? Who's with me? Hey, we got a few people who want to go for stale bread and water. I like that. I like it. Well, if you're like most people, that's not what you're really into. You want to do something for a reason that is something maybe a little better than stale bread and water. Am I right? So let me ask you a question. How many people used a map to get here today? Anybody? Or at least a map app, right? Some of you knew where you're going, so you didn't need one. How many people in here, and this might give away your age, have ever used one of those old-fashioned, really big maps? A couple of you. If you don't know what those are, you're a little younger than I am, and just Google it, okay? But those things were huge. They were like the entire side of your whole windshield, right? What's one thing you don't do right now? You do not text and drive, right? You know what we didn't do? Read a big map and try and drive, okay? Now, why do we use a map? Anybody tell me? To find our way. What are the 2 most important things you need to know before you use a map? Where you are to where you're going. Where are you now? Where are you going? Now, if we use a map to get from where we are to where we're going for one point in time, maybe a day, then how is it that for a much bigger thing, our life, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road, 75% of Americans don't even know where they're going, much less do they not have a map? Is that a little odd to you? Does that seem strange? But that's a well-known statistic. So what I want to talk about today is the idea of building your best life. And we'll get to the whole money thing because that's what I do. But I want you to understand that that's just a tool. See, money's just a tool from which you build your best life. And really what it comes down to is your mindset. And there's a lot of different mindsets out there, and I think it's important that we understand where those mindsets come from. Has anybody ever been taught something really strange that kind of carried through to adulthood? You know, it's interesting. Mine was bread bags. You go to the store, grocery store, you get the bread, you take the bread out, you use the bread, and then you throw the bread bag away, right? Not in our house when I was growing up. Cardinal sin. You took the bread bag, you rinsed it out, you washed it out, and you hung it up. Stale bread and water type of mindset. There's never going to be another bread bag. There's never going to be another bag. We don't want to have to buy the bags. That was my mom's mindset. Well, where did that come from? You have to understand that our mindsets start way back here in the past. They run right up into and smash into our present, and rarely do they go and start looking forward, which is why we tend not to plan our best life, right? So where did her mindset come from? Well, her mother, my grandmother, grew up during the Great Recession. Now you start to understand where that mindset came from. Now, when my fiance, my wife now, met my grandmother for the first time, it was almost my grandmother's birthday, and she looked at her dish towels, and her dish towels were the see-through kind. Now, I'm not talking they were made see-through. I mean, that's how long she had used them. You could see right through them. And I'm not kidding. This was real. And my wife said, well, we've got to do, you told me your grandmother wouldn't appreciate cards or flour for her birthday, so why don't I get her new dish towels? And I'm like, great idea. So we went out and we got some new dish towels for my grandmother. I will never forget giving her those dish towels. She opened the package. Her eyes got wide. I'll never forget, she put them up to her face. She felt them. And she said, this is wonderful. We got big hugs. We felt awesome about that gift. Several years later, when my grandmother passed away, we found those dish towels, just as new as the day that we had bought them. Because in her mindset, her old ones weren't quite done yet. She never had the experience of using the things that she loved so much because of that stale bread and water mindset. Do any of you know some form of that stale bread and water mindset? Maybe you're 20 years old. How many people have been 20? Everybody should be raising their hands. I think maybe there's one young enough. Some really old-looking 19-year-olds. So when you're 20, what's your mindset? I'm gonna live forever. Baby, remember my name, right? 1991, by the way, is when that one was. Those of you who can remember back that far. Then you get to be 30 and you're going, I'm gonna live forever. Then you get to be 40 and you're, then 50 and you're going, maybe I don't want to keep working this hard, this long at exactly what I'm doing for the rest of my life. You know, you got that mindset. So that mindset when you're 20, and it's kind of, believe it or not, that's a stale bread and water mindset too, because you're not planning for your best life. Now let's talk about how do you build that best life and some of the mindsets around that. So remember I told you that money, it's just a tool. When I ask people, what do you want for your best life? They say, I want $1 million. I want $5 million. 10 million, whatever the number is that they pick. They don't know why they pick it. 9 times out of 10, they have no idea why they picked that number. And then I explained to them that money is just a tool to think about how you build your best life. Now, if you put a football into my hands, it's worth about 20, 25 bucks. You put it into Drew Brees' hand, it's worth like $38, $40 million. You put a basketball in my hand, it's worth about 15, 20 bucks. Scottie Pippen's hands, millions of dollars. And yet we have, a lot of us, not necessarily you, but a lot of us have this mentality that we can take this tool and use it and build our best life. Although we haven't planned for it, we don't really know what it is. But say we did. How do you know how to build your best life with that tool? You give me a hammer, I might be able to build you a birdhouse. So my challenge for you today is to find a master craftsman and think about what your best life really is, what that means for you, because my best life is not what your best life is. We are all very different. I encourage you to find a master craftsman. Who here has ever seen some of those YouTube videos, Pinterest, where they have a master painter? And he starts out with a blank canvas or a tree or a wall, and then suddenly over an amount of time, it becomes this beautiful picture. It's amazing, isn't it? Has anybody ever seen that? Yeah. You think I could do that? You wouldn't be able to tell what I was thinking about. So you have those folks that believe that they can take that tool and build it themselves, right? And there's some really smart people here. There's probably some doctors, some lawyers, some dentists, some teachers. You're really smart at what you do. You've got a lot of experience in what you do. And what happens is they're like, well, I can figure this out. I mean, I've got YouTube, I've got CNBC, I've got all this information on the internet, and we all know that everything on the internet and everything on YouTube is correct, right? Absolutely. Okay, maybe not. But the other thing is you're getting all this information from all different parts, and then you're trying to do your regular job, the job that you're really good at and you're really smart at doing, and you end up in that spot that I call the dazed and confused spot. You know that movie? Has anybody heard of that Dazed and Confused movie? 1993, Matthew McConaughey. Great movie, look it up. It's just fun to watch. But every single character in that book, or in that movie, was truly dazed and confused. And you know what they all had in common besides that? Is none of them knew that they were dazed and confused. They did a survey recently about Bitcoin, and they realized that 80% of the people who owned Bitcoin in this survey had no idea what it was. Over 50% of them thought they could take physical delivery of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's not physical, in case you weren't aware of that. So you have that mindset, that I can just do this on my own. You have the other type of mindset where this is way too complicated. I'm going to make this super simple. And I'm going to buy the S&P 500 every single month for the rest of my life, and everything's going to look okay. Well, here is kind of the issue with that, right? Because may I tell you one more story? Yeah. One more story? So how many of you have made a wrong turn when you were using the map? Anybody ever done that? Made a wrong turn? I did that. Traveling from Colorado to Illinois, driving my Chevy Suburban. I love those things. They just roll down the road. Those are great. Here's the greatest thing, though. My 6 kids in the back were all sleeping. How many parents we got in the room? How many parents? Got a few? What does that mean? Peace and quiet. And what do you not do? You do not pull over and check the map under any circumstances. And I felt pretty confident. I had mapped out my route. I was doing okay. I was like, my wife's asleep too. This is great. Right up until I saw that sign for Wyoming. For those of you who are geographically challenged, Wyoming is not on the way from Colorado to Illinois. Okay? Made a wrong turn. I lost 3 hours of my life. And my wife still wonders how come our trip took 3 hours longer. She's a very sound sleeper. So here's the deal, though. I lost 3 hours of my life. I was aggravated. I was frustrated. How many more hours, how many more years might you lose if you actually have a map and you don't check the map? If you make a wrong turn on your path to building your best life because you took the simplistic idea and thought that that was right for everyone. Remember, everyone doesn't have the same best life. They may need a different plan. So remember when I talked about that master craftsman? This is my hope for you. I've been doing this for 30 years, okay? This is kind of all I do, is manage money and things like that. All that boring stuff that I find fascinating. I'm kind of a nerd that way. But what I'm going to ask you to do is, number one, know where you're going. Plan your best life. Know what it is. And spend that time with a master craftsman. If you had a master craftsman, what kind of life would you commission that master craftsman to make for you? I'm not talking about your mother, your brother, your sister, your nephew, your best friend. I'm talking about somebody who has been in the trenches, understands what it means to manage money, to work with that tool called money, and commission them to create your best life. Can you do that with me? Can you do that for me? That's great. My name is Jon Browning. I hope you got something out of this talk today. And I'm around after this and would be happy to talk to any of you. Thank you.